So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
I was joking with Michael beforehand that the Russians were after me, and you guys have just seen it there. Did my mind just blow there, and then all of a sudden did a completely different video clip in the middle for a final whistle podcast? Jesus, Anyway, let's moving swiftly along. Michael, thank you for joining us today. As you guys would have seen there in the Chiron and the weird spooky Chiron that was at the start there, that this one's going to be all about Lutsharel Geertruida, and I hope once again that I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I've done a podcast on it from a statistical point of view previously, but you know, I've seen as I do, I always try and watch 5 games for players and then do a podcast. I obviously didn't get a chance to do it with this guy after the news broke. Went this small a bit quicker. Went based on 2 games that I had watched. But Michael is my go-to guy and Eredivisie. You'll find him at Eredivisie, Mike there, and with Football Oranje. And Mike, thanks for popping on the podcast. And I hope you're going to delight us with a lot of good news about Lutsharel Geertruida, who we hope we're going to sign in the coming days.
Yeah, hi Neil, hi everyone. As everyone might remember, I'm a Villa fan as well as a Dutch football know-all, and yeah, I love the Eredivisie. I also love Aston Villa, and when the two worlds collide, it's brilliant. Hence the Villa flags in the background. But yeah, so his name is pronounced Lutsharel Geertruida, and it might be really hard to pronounce it exactly right, but if you can say it like Geertruida, then you're pretty close. But Geertruida is what I'll keep trying to say throughout the entire thing. I've watched him for years. I really like him. He's like the heartbeat of Feyenoord and who they are, what they're about. And I look forward to kind of breaking him down a bit, really, and talking about him from what I've seen. Yeah,
because as I say, I did a podcast, as I mentioned there, statistically wise, and a lot of people are getting excited about him, me included. The guy is like there's a pedigree to him, I suppose, coming up through the ranks, I suppose, of Feyenoord. And if I'm not mistaken, he made his debut very, very early. And he's kind of been one of those a mainstay. Obviously, captained the team at the weekend in their friendly, so must be well thought of within the dressing room. So, talk to us a small bit more about the man himself, I suppose, from that point of view.
Yeah, he's really quiet for a start, which you wouldn't expect when you see him on the pitch, because he's quite lively and has a great connection with the fans. Okay. But in terms of like interviews, like he hardly ever comes out to the media. There's a story that says he has a bit of a stutter and a bit of a stammer, so he doesn't come out openly in the media very often. But I think that's something of his past, really, and he just is quite a quiet, hardworking guy. But when it comes to on the pitch, yeah, lively, and that heartbeat I spoke about already, he embodies what Feyenoord are about. The club they represent a kind of working class part of the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. If anyone was not aware, I'd say compared to sort of like a Liverpool or a Manchester. And what he does is he brings the fans with him, with his passion, with the way that he just plays football. He cares so much about getting results of Feyenoord. He wants to stay there for a long time because he wants to see the club get into the Champions League. He wants to captain the club. It is his team. He'd be very happy to stay, I'm sure. But he also wants that adventure. He wants to go abroad. And he's taken his time to do it, doing it now at the age of 24, I believe. And it's the right age to go. He's been a regular for Feyenoord for at least 4 years. And he's done the Conference League, the Europa League, the Champions League in that order too, which is nice. And now he can say, I've done it all and I can go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you mentioned there that he's a bit of a fan favorite. What do you like? Obviously, if he's not somebody who comes out and does the John McGinns of the world, doesn't do a stand-up routine every time there's a microphone in front of him, which I absolutely love, by the way. That's not a negative on John McGinn. It must be because of what he does on the field. So talk to us about what you've seen from him on the field. And obviously, statistics and the actuality of things. Sometimes they can marry up nicely together and they are exactly as they should be, but sometimes they can be wildly different as well. So it's always good to know what you've seen of him in your time of following both the Dutch football team, Dutch national team, I suppose, number 1, and number 2 Feyenoord as well.
So this is where I can talk about him glowingly, but also with a few reservations still about him, which I think is why he's coming to a club such as Aston Villa. And I'm saying that again as a Villa fan rather than a Man City, Real Madrid, if you like. So if people aren't aware, he's a defender, a centre-back and a right-back. He's played more games at right-back, but I've always seen him in my eyes as more of a centre-back. However, I think with the way Villa play and knowing Ezri Konsa and his role, the two players are very similar. And I'd expect that they can both play each other's positions, with being for Konsa to be more of a centre-back and Geertruida to be more of a right-back. Obviously, Matty Cash is a very attacking, gets up the pitch kind of right-back. Geertruida is more defensively minded, but he's very good on the ball. A lot of play does go through him because of what he can do. He scored like 8 goals last season, 5 assists, and that's pretty damn good for a right-back come centre-back. The reason why he mostly played at right-back, though, more recently was because Feyenoord have got a couple of really good centre-backs. In fact, 3 really good centre-backs, and he doesn't need to play there. They'd much rather have him at right-back. And he has got a lot better on the ball over the past year or so. When he first broke out onto the scene, he was more of a right-back, but that was because of him being young. And I think in Dutch football, they tend to put those young centre-backs out full-back, as I've seen with Ajax today, even playing a centre-back, left-back for the first time. So what he has been able to do is impress at right-back, and then as Feyenoord moved players on, he grew more to more of a regular. He started to play more at centre-back, but throughout his years can play left-back even, and defensive midfield. The defensive midfield experiment wasn't the best idea, but it was tried out, and you can do a job there if necessary. But yeah, I think he has obviously been brought to the club to be that extra Ezri Konsa, because Konsa can't be a centre-back and a right-back. And watching it for a long time now, I actually thought a while back, he tried to be perfect here, but we need that extra player. And that might be subliminal. I probably saw a link with him being linked to Villa a while back. I don't know. But I always thought ever since then, it'd be great if he could come to the club, and now it's happening. His other option was to go to Leipzig this summer, who was also linked with last summer, but chose to stay with Feyenoord, and now he seems to move into Villa, from what we hear. But lots more to say about him. I think I said just now that I had some reservations. That was because I think on the Champions League stage, on the Dutch international stage, there have been a couple of fairly big errors, I have to say. That kind of made me think, maybe he's not quite as brilliant as I first made him out to be, but he still has had really strong games in Europe. I've said it. Played in the Conference League, got final to the final, and was outstanding. Had a decent run in the Europa League. I think it was the quarter final the year after. This is all under Arne Slot, of course. And then that season, they got knocked out at the Champions League group stage. They finished 3rd and got to the Europa League, and again faced Roma and got knocked out. But I think he last season made a couple of mistakes. I can remember them quite well, actually. I think it was Lazio. Feyenoord lost away in the Champions League, and he was the man playing the striker on side. He fell asleep, basically. And the other one was an own goal that he scored against Atletico Madrid. It was just a complete switch off, because most of the time he's so good. And people will be very quick to say he's coming from the Dutch league, so he can't be that great, can he? It could be hit or miss. And in the Champions League, it's his chance to show, of course, that he can match this level. Made a couple of mistakes, but overall he's still really solid. And I don't think he's better than Ezri Konsa. I think he's a really good alternative when we need to rest him or he has an injury. And I think he's also far better defensively than Matty Cash at right back. So there are pluses to his game for sure. Internationally, he played a bit of the Euro 2024, people may remember. He was playing more as a right back again, but I quite like him also when he's the right centre back of a 3, if you like. He does that position really well. And that's why he was due to play at Feyenoord this season, as they're going to a 3-4-3. But I think that he adds a lot to the Villa squad, and I don't see him being like a reserve player. I'm thinking he'll play a lot of games throughout the season, but will he be like our first choice centre back? No. Maybe a first choice right back if we're going to go with him now over Cash, or so we can play Konsa centrally. Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, people who listen to this podcast, I've dialed it back in the last couple of weeks since we started playing games. But people who listen to this podcast will know that I still think that there's a potential that Unai Emery at some stage will play a three at the back, or will implement that, and will change between back four, back three. And that's why my next question is very poignant, and you've kind of thought ahead with regards to that. But you said something a while ago that interested me. You do see him as more of a centre back in time to come, do you? Over a right back position.
It's a really weird one, because if you look at the stats, he's played more as a right back over his career, and people will go, he's a right back, I still have him in my head more of a centre back, but I think you get the best out of him when it's those Champions League nights and you can put him at right back, and just makes your team so much more solid, and he can do stuff on the ball that other right backs aren't quite as confident in doing. And I'll come back to that old statement. I think it was Gary Neville that said it. You're either a failed winger or a failed centre back when you're at right back. But I think just the way it's always happened for him, he is a very capable centre back, but it's been often pushed out to right back because of that's the final makeup of their squad. And I think that's just the way it's gone for him. But I just think he can do both. I know that there have been a few doubts, more on the Dutch side of it, if you like, with him going abroad, that as a centre back aerially, not the best, but doesn't mean he's bad. I know that there were doubts as well about Pau Torres when he was coming in from La Liga. But then think of what he brings to the game as well, of course. But I do know that now, until Tyrone Mings is back, there are a lot of centre backs that aren't known for their aerial ability. And I think they're bringing in another one where he's not the best at centre back for that side of it. But if you put him at right back, he's very, very strong when it comes to defending that post, for example, when crosses come in from our left side and he has to defend it on the right side.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I just popped these up as well. We were discussing these myself and Michael were looking at these beforehand as well. And it's interesting to note with the aerial duel percentage. A lot of fans, and me to a certain degree as well. I get fixated. I've gotten fixated on this as being a be all and end all for the summer recruitment. And recently I've started to say, you guys would have heard a podcast. I goes, you know what? I probably don't think that they're going to go down that route. Like 63.6% is at the centre half level is far and away. That's absolutely fine. There's no problem there. Like, we're not talking about the 50% mark, the out of 45% mark that Pau Torres was coming in at. Like, if we look at this here, and the reason I brought this up is you look at that radial graph that I've crudely done here. It comes in at bang on the same amount as Ezri Konsa. Now, I don't think Konsa is bad in the air. There are better players in the air than him, all right, yeah, but I don't think that he's bad in the air. He would come into this team and have one of the best aerial duel success rates, or have the best aerial duel success rate of all the players in our team. Now look at Diego Carlos here in the blue line. Yeah, you don't want to be coming in and around that level. You certainly don't want to be coming in around 45% aerial duel success. And that always boiled my brain with Carlos. And I think it's one of the reasons why he is moving on is Unai has expected more, has asked for more, has tried to get more in that area out of it, and he just doesn't seem capable of doing it. And he's fine with the ball at his feet, Diego Carlos. But look, as we can see here with the radial graphs here, Pau, Longley, and Konsa were every bit as good as him. So I think he's become expendable in that point of view. So bringing in someone like Geertruida who can come in there, play that right hand side, is right footed, and cover right back, which we'll look at in a moment, I think is very sensible from my point of view. And here are his numbers when we look at it from a right back point of view. I don't have everybody else's aerial duel percentage, but he's in the 93rd percentile for right back. So I'll put it this way: there's only 7% of right backs in the top 5 leagues in Europe that are any way better than him in the air. So I suppose it's all about context, about where he is in the field, and probably where to best utilize him from that point of view. So that's a really interesting piece. From the progressive pass nature point of view, or from the progressive play nature point of view, should I say? Like, looking at his statistics here, he's one of the most progressive right backs in all Europe's top 5 leagues in the last 365 days by statistics. Now, you mentioned a couple of things there. You mentioned that he's a bit more defensive. That's an interesting one to me. So he's not somebody who's going to bomb forward. I haven't seen him massively bomb forward, but I have seen him dictate play from the right back position. Can you talk to us a small bit more about that, maybe about that Arne Slot way? Because that's not only interesting from Geertruida, but it's also interesting in the fact that, hey, he's now going to be at Liverpool, and Liverpool are probably one of the best right backs to dictate play in the whole of Europe in Trent Alexander-Arnold. So that's kind of exciting in that if Liverpool saw fit to bring somebody in who wanted their right backs to play that way, should we maybe expect him to play the same way as Trent, albeit that he doesn't bomb up that right wing and take free kicks?
I think you won't see him start like spraying long balls from side to side or whatever. That's not his game. But what I've liked about Geertruida is he does get forward to a certain extent, but we're talking about him playing for Feyenoord here, where they're dominating a lot of games in the Eredivisie, rather than say just on the Champions League stage. I don't think his stats were quite the same, but he has improved over the past 2 years markedly in how he does get forward, bombing down the right side if that's where he's played. I think that the way Slot was getting him to play was sometimes, not in all the games, but he would tuck in a little bit, as we're now seeing at Liverpool, where Robertson's now tucking in as a left back and coming more inside rather than outside. And Geertruida could do the same thing. This is what makes him so versatile and actually quite impressive. That his stats here are very good. Like he's not short, is he? You can see his height right there on the screen, but he's also pretty good in the air, given that he's like bang on 6 foot pretty much. He's really good on the ball, despite him being a defender by trade. He does get forward. He does score goals, scoring 8 in the last season. That's really, again, very impressive. It was his best season for that. I think you're getting a well-rounded player that can play in all these different places when Villa really need him to be there, when we need a quality player to play at right back or fill in at centre back, or even, hey, like to play in defensive midfield because a couple of players are out. He'll do that. And that's why I've really liked him over the years, because of number one, his passion, and number two, because he's just quality. You give him the ball and he barely gives it away. You see him get forwards. He can do things. He's a good threat in the box when they go forwards. And their defending and in general, he can do it. You know, when you watch someone, you go, oh, that was a good tackle. Oh, that was a nice pass. Oh, that was really. He's one of those players. I find myself saying that about him.
That's really interesting, Michael, because when I did the podcast, I had a couple of people DM me afterwards and go, "Oh, geez, I don't look at this guy. He didn't make an awful lot of tackles. Look at those. The tackling numbers are so low," and we can see it here on the screen. But once again, this is probably more of a commentary that I'd like you to give on Arne Slot's tactics or how Feyenoord played last year. My hypothesis on it was top two in Dutch football last year were far out widely ahead of, maybe the top three were widely ahead of everybody else in the league. So there would have been a ton of games whereby this guy didn't even need to sniff a tackle in games. You know, there's I won't get on to mentioning teams within their division, but like Feyenoord would have been a good step above them in a lot of areas, I would imagine. Am I right in saying that, or is it a case that Arne Slot doesn't really have his fullbacks engage as much as maybe other teams do? Is that a trait of Slot's management, or is it, as I'm thinking here, that you go through a year's football and really you've got 8 games in the league where you're massively tested down those wings, or am I being naive with regards to their division football?
No, for a start, yes, the top 2 last season in particular were far and away the best teams in the Eredivisie. Ajax are struggling. RZ we saw weren't that great when Villa played them. They are normally a better team than that, and hopefully this season can show it. Twente had a good one, and they finished 3rd last season, and they're now in the Champions League qualifiers. The games where Geertruida really stood out were those ones where they would go to Twente away, or they would play Ajax at home, and you had to fill in at left back, and they won 6-0. And it's these things where he stands out more of his play in these bigger games where he has more of these things to do, if you like. Otherwise, it's him going forward and it's him trying to make things happen, because they're winning 3 or 4-0 at home and he's playing right back, so can tootle on forward, and it doesn't really matter because they've won the game already. there's that to note. But also the way Arne Slot played with Feyenoord last season, but also the season before, was they would press quite high up on the one-time ticker. So if it was on, say, the opposition's left side, the right winger and the right back, i.e. Geertruida, would press up high together as a two. And then if it swaps sides, it would be the left wing and the left back pressing up high.
That's interesting because that will explain an awful lot of his heat map that you see here, because a lot of people went into overdrive going, this guy can play as a defensive midfielder or even a central midfielder as well. And I don't want him going anywhere near that position, from not because of what I've seen. It's we've enough people in there. We need versatility. We don't need that level of versatility. That's my top point. But when you look at his heat map there, it does show that he's gotten quite far up the field, but it's like as if they've put a wall where he can't go any further. So that to me led me to believe as well, this guy's been tasked with press, and know your role then after that. And that's cool too. That's brilliant. I wish sometimes that we did that ourselves with our fullbacks, and we wouldn't get caught with diagonal balls in behind at the start of last season.
No, it's funny how these things all match up with the stats, and it's nice, it's satisfying. You go, oh, what I was thinking is just true, or your thoughts and ideas. Yeah.
It doesn't always work that way. It certainly doesn't. But I think for me the exciting part for him is that you mentioned there. Yes, you mentioned Champions League, you mentioned Dutch national team, and you mentioned obviously they beat Ajax 6-0 last year. We struggled to beat Ajax and they were going poorly as well, so Feyenoord are a well-oiled machine. I wonder if he could put what's his name, Santiago Jimenez in his suitcase as well if he does come to Villa Park. That would be a nice little surprise if that was to happen too. But alas, I think that is definitely fever dream stuff. But the thing that excites me so much about him is the fact that he is tasked with a heavy workload. I remember, when we signed Boubacar Kamara, that was the one thing that really floated my boat about him. I was like, right, okay, if we want to be serious about keeping possession, if we want to be serious about dominating games and being ball dominant, we need players who can do it. We can't just wake up in the morning and say, right, we're going to be a ball dominant team, and have Gavin McCann and Kareem El Akabi in the middle of midfield and expect the two of them to be ball dominant midfielders. You need guys who are able to do it and have done it in the past. And Boubacar Kamara came in here and he was an absolute ball hog in the middle of midfield. And we see that now. The fact he was comfortable receiving the ball 60, 70, 80 times during a game. And for a right back, this guy is receiving the ball 77 times, passing off the ball 70 times in the game, and has a pass completion rate of 89%. We know Aston Villa fans love their pass completion rate. Absolutely love that pass completion rate, as long as you're not George Boateng. So for me, I think that's exciting because, you can become very predictable. Like people talk about us losing Douglas Luiz. And we have lost Douglas Luiz for his metronomic ability in the middle of midfield, being that, get it, pass it, and be dominant from that point of view, and have a good pass completion rate at the end of a game, or whatever the case may be. Now, if you're able to have that in different positions around the field, I think that's exciting because it moves the point of attack. It also moves the point of triangles, and it also gets teams moving around if they're in a lower or mid block. So even though you've got a right back here, having a right back that's comfortable with this level of workload, and also having that pass completion rate from a statistical point of view, I think Unai Emery is probably rubbing his hands at that and going, "Yeah, I can make something happen here." I know you've probably said it already, and I know we flirted with it at the start, but is he Ezri Konsa 2.0, and is it a case of how do you overcome the conundrum of playing Ezri Konsa at centre back or right back? You just buy an extra Ezri Konsa, and that's like, is it that simple? I know you mentioned it previously. I wasn't sure whether I heard you answer that or not.
I don't think it's quite 2.0. No, I mean, no player is going to be exactly the same. But I always feel with Konsa and Geertruida, what you can also say is they used to use the words heavy workload there in a different sense. But I'm thinking it more of they can play a lot of games. This player is barely ever injured over the past 5 years. He's played for Feyenoord, so that he can play game after game after game. And I remember when. I think it must have been the Conference League season when they got to the final. How many games is that? Wow, 50, 60, if you include the Cup Games League, and that he was playing like every single one of them and wasn't one of those players that was coming out for a rest. Whereas There were even centre backs that had to come out because they couldn't play 2 games in a week sometimes, and he was playing every single one. I was surprised. Thought, can we just take him off now? He's playing it right back today. He's up and down the pitch a lot. Can we just let's rest him? Because I'm also a Dutch club fan when they're in Europe, as well as a Villa fan, of course. So when I'm seeing Final playing in the league, thinking, no, we need to rest him for that really important European game. But he played every single minute of it, I swear. And this is what Villa need more of. It's more players that can keep doing it without crumbling, without getting injured. And that's what I felt like with Konza as well. He was playing game after game and was barely getting rested. I don't know whether his body was feeling up to it, whether Emery was thought, no, you can do it. I'm not sure what the situation was there, but it always felt like with Geertruida that it didn't matter and he could just keep playing. The way the two of them are, though, yes, they're both. I mean, if I said to you, Neil, is Konza a centre back or right back, what would you say?
Well, I'm gonna get pelters here because the Villa Twitter thinks that Villa Twitter is firmly in the camp that he's a right back. I think Konza is a centre back.
Interesting.
I want Konza to play centre back for the whole lot of this season, but that's the interesting part because and look, once again, it's what we have. Look, put it this way: we go out and we somehow get Man City to part with Ruben Diaz. Hell yeah, I'm putting Konza at right back, you know. But until something like that happens, and where we are at the moment, Konza is going to be our right back. Like Mings comes back, Mings is going to fight it out with Pau Torres, I think, for that left back position. That's a great fight to have. But I think Konza, like you mentioned it there, your best ability. We've spoken about statistics, we've spoken about tactics, we've spoken about what's he good at, what's he's not good at. Your best ability is availability. And that's always going to be the way it's going to be in sport. You know, you could be Philippe Coutinho, point in case. All the talent in the world. Jesus, he's more talented than his baby toad than any, probably barring Liam Brady, but any Irish footballer has ever had, ever. And he can't get on the field anymore because his body is broken down. So he can have all the ability in the world, but if you don't have availability, you don't have any ability, you know. So that, I think, is a really interesting piece for me. So to hear that he's an Iron Man is great. That's a nice piece. Now, could he slip and fall down the stairs in the morning? Yes, he could, and slip a disc. Yeah, we all know that could happen. But you know, a lot is made of injury history, and not having an injury history is brilliant. You know, I like to hear that too.
Yeah,
sorry, I went off on a tangent there. You asked me a question, and I completely went off road there.
You could ask me the same question about him, and I think I find it hard to answer. I'll be like, I feel like really he's a centre back, but because everything he can do, he's played a right back a lot, and now we've got Geertruida potentially. I think it's Konza right back, Konza centre back, Geertruida right back. But equally, then how often is that going to happen in the season? If that happens half of the games, we've done pretty well. I can just see a lot of rotation, and sometimes if Konza's not fit, Geertruida's playing at centre back. I also just want to remark that the difference between another player people may have seen in the Netherlands, Jordan Taser, who's a right back at PSV, similar-ish mould again, more of a right back really than a centre back, but has a physicality to play at centre half. The difference between him and Geertruida, just at the weekend, Taser threw his toys at the pram. He said, I'm not going to play another game for PSV because he wants his big transfer to Monaco, even though he's a PSV born and bred kind of player. Geertruida played at the weekends, kept always thinking to himself, must have been knowing he was talking to Villa. They drew with Villa 1-1, and he looked devastated at full time, like he was on the ground. And he must have been thinking to himself, that was probably my last game for the club, and I didn't give him the send-off that I wanted, kind of thing. But obviously didn't say it to the media. But now you look back at that moment and you go, that he really cared about winning that game, even though that could have been a meaningless game to him. He just wants to win that game. And you talk about effort, and every player wants to try their best and everything, but he's another one of those that's going to come into the Villa team and really will just want to try.
And that's, you know, that is massive. And bringing a full circle, you started this podcast with saying he's a fan favourite. That's probably why. Never injured, always available, has a heart like a lion. Yeah, what's not to like? You know, what's not to like with players like that as well? Michael, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. This was a bit of I was walking the dog this morning, and there's no euphemism in that. I was out walking my dog this morning, and I was thinking of Michael. Get your heads out of the gutter, all the rest of you. But I was I was chatting, and I got chatting to him this morning, and I said, Michael, you know what? I've got to get you on again, because this guy, Geertruida, was going around my head with regards to whether it was going to happen, because the Carlos news had broken. I think something is going to. I hope something is going to go down in the next few days, because I would say there's an imaginary deadline of Tuesday afternoon to have somebody in that could be worth anywhere worth its salt of being involved in on Saturday. But you know, I think that there will be an awful lot of rumor, conjecture, and movement, I think, over the next week, specifically between Carlos and within the centre-back position. I think the striker position will rumble on for Villa a small bit more. And if we're linked with any Dutch strikers in future, Michael, I will definitely be giving you a shout. But thank you so much for your time. As I mentioned previously, at Eredivisie, Mike, you guys won bronze in the football, or was it the, oh Jesus, I should have brought this up before I started saying it. What was it, bronze in the
yeah, a couple of years ago now, it was the Football Content Awards. For what we did with our Eredivisie content. Yeah, we do English language Dutch football. We've done a big season preview podcast where we talk about every single team in the league. So if that's your bag, that's your cup of tea, and you want to come and join in and get into a new league, go and check it out. It's all in English. So there's that. We've got the YouTube channel, but also there's a website behind us, and we do stuff on social media as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Football Oranje.
And anybody who knows this podcast knows that you know, dipping in and out of the rest of the leagues is something I like to do as well. And Michael's stuff is the first place I go to for Dutch football, and you know, why not? Because they are absolutely brilliant with it, and I would advise everybody to do that too. But thank you so much for your time, Michael. I hope this has enthused everybody about the potential arrival of Lutsharel Geertruida.
Well done, we got there. It's okay. You did better than the commentators at the Euros who kept saying Geertruida. Like, that's not the first thing you got to get right, is how to pronounce players' names if you're paid a lot of money to commentate for the whole country. Just ask the Dutch commentator who's there, and they'll tell you.
Absolutely. Someone messaged me there and said, well, I'm still getting Philigine's name wrong, Jaden Philigine's name wrong. I don't even remember mentioning Jaden Philigine this on this podcast, but I know I do at times call him Philigine Bades, and he just goes by Philogene now. So I do need to take that advice with the commentators need to take as well, and write it down here somewhere. But once again, thanks a million. Everybody get on Michael's Twitter as well, and get on Football Oranje also. We have a packed week ahead. We have potentially have another special guest coming on tomorrow. Hopefully I will have that confirmed tomorrow morning and for tomorrow night. Then we've got a big preview with a couple of familiar faces in the Villa podcasting world. Will be joining me on Tuesday for a preview. We'll be looking forward then, for a season preview, should I say. We'll be looking forward then to a West Ham preview on Thursday. And then we're back into the season then with Team Sheet Tantrums and post-match podcasts and all the great things that come with it then from Saturday onwards. So hopefully you guys will stick with me. If you don't already like the podcast, click on the thumbs up. Costs you nothing to subscribe, and hit that little bell as well so you know when we go live. And little impromptu ones like this, because I didn't even advertise this one out there on socials or anything like that. So please do that if you haven't done it already. And if you're watching on X or Twitter, hop over to YouTube and just give us the thumbs up. Helps us out in the algorithms. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you're not following us on X, pop over to X and click on follow, and then delete the app if you want afterwards. I don't mind. As long as you're following there, that's all that matters. But once again, Michael, thanks very much. And thanks to everybody that's watching. We will see you again soon. Stay safe, stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.
The Villa.